We already told everyone you uninvited us, my mother said, her voice perfectly steady. Don't make us look like liars, Wendy. That was 6 weeks before my wedding. 6 weeks before 200 guests would sit in white folding chairs on the lawn of a farmhouse I'd paid for with double shifts and a sold car. 6 weeks before my husband stood up at our reception, asked for the projector, and played something that turned my mother's face the color of ash. I didn't plan a confrontation. I planned a wedding. But sometimes the truth picks its own schedule. What Derek showed on that screen, I still can't believe my parents thought no one would ever find out. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop where you're watching from and your local time in the comments. I love reading those. I'm Wendy. I'm 29. I'm a nurse in a small town in Georgia. Now let me take you back to March, the night Derek proposed, and everything started to unravel. Derek asked me on the porch of his mother's farmhouse, one knee, a ring he'd saved 11 months for, fireflies blinking across the pasture like tiny witnesses. I said yes before he finished the sentence. I called my parents 20 minutes later. My hands were still shaking. My mother picked up on the second ring. I told her. She said congratulations, flat, like reading a receipt, then asked the date. September 14th, I said. It's the only Saturday the venue has left. Silence. Long enough for me to hear the kitchen faucet running in the background. That's Courtney's Bali launch week, you know that. I did know. My younger sister had been posting countdowns on Instagram for 2 months. A luxury wellness retreat, 500,000 followers watching. Brand deal, content calendar, the whole production. Mom, the venue won't hold the date. The deposit's already down. Your sister has 500,000 people waiting for that trip. She paused. You have, maybe 200 guests? I wish I could tell you that surprised me. It didn't. When I graduated nursing school, my parents arrived 45 minutes late because they were driving Courtney to a casting call in Atlanta. When I made honor roll in 10th grade, I taped the certificate on the fridge next to Courtney's pageant photos. It was gone by morning. I always told myself it wasn't personal. Courtney was the bright one, the visible one. I was the reliable one. Reliable doesn't need applause. I'll talk to your father, my mother said. But Wendy, be realistic. She hung up. I sat on that porch with a ring on my finger and a knot in my stomach, and I thought, maybe this time, just this once, they'll choose me. They didn't. My father called that evening. 8:17 p.m. I remember because I was standing at the stove making pasta, and the timer on my phone read 8:17 when his name flashed across the screen. Derek was at the kitchen table. I put the call on speaker. Looking back, I'm glad I did. A witness matters. I'm going to say this once, my father said. His voice had that low, controlled register he uses when he believes the conversation is already over. Move the date, or your mother and I won't be there. Dad, the deposit is non-refundable. Then you'll lose it. That's what happens when you don't think about your family. I looked at Derek. He reached across the table and took my hand. He didn't squeeze it. He just held it. Steady, the way you hold something you're not going to let go of. I'm not moving it, Dad. 3 seconds of nothing. Then the line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, steam rising from the pot behind me. Derek said, "You okay?" And I said, "Yeah," which was a lie. But it was the kind of lie that gets you through the next 10 minutes so you can eat dinner and pretend the floor isn't tilting. My father has run our family the way he runs his hardware store. Inventory in, inventory out. No backtalk from the shelves. You do what Harold Foster says, or Harold Foster stops talking to you. I'd watched him freeze out his own brother for 2 Thanksgivings over a property line dispute. I knew exactly what won't be there meant. It wasn't a threat. It was a policy. I just didn't know yet how far that policy would reach. 10 days later, the caterer called. "Hi, this is Brenda from Magnolia Table. I'm calling because Diane Foster contacted us to cancel the deposit on her card. We need a new payment method within 10 days or we release your date." I was in the break room at the hospital, still in scrubs, coffee going cold in my hand. "She canceled it?" "Yes, ma'am, this morning." I called the florist next. Same story. Diane had phoned in, polite as Sunday morning, and pulled both deposits. The photographer was still intact. That one was on my card. Everything else was gone. $14,000. Vanished with 2 phone calls. That night, I sat on our kitchen floor with a legal pad and a calculator. Savings account, $6,200. Wedding in 14 weeks. Deficit, roughly $8,000. Derek sat down beside me, back against the cabinet, shoulder touching mine. "We sell the Civic," I said. He didn't argue. We listed my 2011 Honda the next morning, got $4,800 from a kid at the community college. I picked up 3 extra night shifts a week on top of my regular rotation. 12-hour shifts, then home to address invitations at the kitchen table until my handwriting went crooked. Derek watched me lick an envelope at 2 a.m. and said, "Let me run your credit report. We need it for the house loan anyway." I said sure, barely listening. I was calculating how many overtime hours it would take to cover the new caterer who charged by the head instead of the platter. He opened his laptop. I sealed another envelope. When I looked up 20 minutes later, Derek was staring at the screen and he hadn't moved. Not even his fingers, just frozen. "What?" I said. He didn't answer right away. Before Derek could explain what he'd found, my phone started buzzing. Not calls, texts, one after another, lighting up the screen like a slot machine nobody asked to play. "Aunt Carol, heard you told your parents not to come? That's cold, Wendy." "Uncle Gene, your mom is heartbroken. Call her." A cousin I hadn't spoken to since Thanksgiving. "Family is forever. Don't do this." I scrolled through 11 messages in 4 minutes. Every single one carried the same story. That I had uninvited my own parents from my wedding. That I was being cruel. That Diane was devastated. I called Aunt Patty. She's my mother's younger sister, the only person in our family who ever looked me in the eye and said, "I see what they're doing." She picked up on the first ring. "They told everyone it was you," Patty said. No preamble. "Harold called Jean yesterday. Diane posted in the family group chat. Not directly, you know how she does it. Just a sad emoji and, 'Please pray for our family.' Classic." "What exactly did they say?" "That you banned them. And that Derek is," her words, "isolating you from the people who love you." I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. 40-plus relatives now believed I was an ungrateful daughter being controlled by her fiancé. My father had weaponized Christmas dinners and birthday cards. My mother had weaponized sympathy. "Patty, none of that is true. I know who you are, sweetheart. I'll be at that wedding." I hung up and stared at the ceiling. The damage was already spreading, root deep, through every branch of the family tree, and I didn't know yet that my mother was about to take it one step further, to someone I actually cared about impressing. 2 days later, Derek came home from his mother's house looking like someone had rearranged the furniture inside his chest. "My mom got a phone call," he said. He sat across from me at the table, hands flat, the way he does when he's choosing words carefully. "A woman named Diane called her, told her you have emotional instability, said she should, quote, keep an eye on you." The room tilted. Not dramatically, just a slow, quiet tilt, like a picture frame sliding off a nail. My mother had called Ruth Calloway, my future mother-in-law, a woman I'd only known 8 months, a woman whose respect I was still earning. And Diane had called her to plant a seed that I was broken. Canceling the deposits, I could handle. Turning the relatives against me, I could stomach. But calling Derek's mother to sabotage the only new family I was building, that was different. That wasn't punishment. That was demolition. "What did your mom say?" I asked. She said, "I've spent 30 years in a courtroom. I know what manipulation sounds like." Ruth Calloway had worked as a clerk at the county courthouse until she retired. She'd sat through custody battles, fraud hearings, protection orders. She didn't rattle. "She recorded the call," Derek said. "Georgia's a one-party consent state. She said if we ever need it, it's ours." I sat with that for a long time. Then I said the truest thing I'd said in weeks. "I'm not fighting them, Derek. I'm just done explaining myself." From that point forward, all communication with my parents went through text, written record only. I didn't block them. I didn't yell. I simply stopped performing the role of the grateful daughter, and I didn't invite them back. Courtney FaceTimed me on a Tuesday night. She was in her studio apartment, ring light glowing behind her, lashes on, content ready even at 9 p.m. Her whole life was a set, and she never stepped off it. Just move it, it's one day. It's my wedding. And it's my career. Since when does your career outrank my marriage? She tilted her head the way she does when she thinks she's being patient with someone slower. Since it pays for Mom and Dad's new roof. That stopped me. I didn't know Courtney was funding anything for our parents. Or, more accurately, I didn't know our parents were telling Courtney she was funding them. What roof? Dad said the estimate was $12,000. I covered half, brand money. She shrugged like it was nothing, like writing a $6,000 check to your parents at 25 was just the price of being the favorite. Courtney, listen to me. I'm not moving the date. Then you're going to lose them. I already lost them. A long time ago. She blinked. For half a second something cracked behind the ring light. A flicker of recognition, maybe guilt. Then it sealed shut. Just do what they want when. It's easier. Easier for who? She ended the call. I stood in the kitchen holding my phone and something Courtney said kept circling, since it pays for Mom and Dad's new roof. Courtney thought she was the family benefactor. She had no idea, or maybe she did, that my parents had other funding sources with my name on them. When Derek finished pulling my full credit report the next morning, we found out exactly where the roof money really came from. Before I could process what Derek found, my father went nuclear. Harold Foster sent a message to the family group chat. 32 people, 3 generations, from Aunt Patty to my 17-year-old cousin in Jacksonville. Diane and I will not attend Wendy's wedding. She has made it clear that our family traditions don't matter to her. We hope she'll come around. Please respect our decision and give us privacy during this painful time. Painful time. Like he was the one selling his car and picking up night shifts. The responses piled up. Not for me, for them. So sorry, Harold. Praying for you both. She'll regret this one day. An aunt I hadn't seen since 2019 sent me a private message. Shame on you, Wendy. An uncle wrote, your parents gave you everything. Everything. They gave Courtney everything. They gave me a social security number to borrow against, but I didn't know that part yet. Not fully. I turned off my phone. I was sitting in my car in the hospital parking lot. My shift started in 20 minutes. The sky was that deep Georgia purple it gets right before it goes black. Derek texted on the old phone, the one I kept for emergencies. Come home. We need to talk about what I found. I didn't go home. I went into my shift, because rent doesn't care about family drama, and the ER doesn't pause for heartbreak. I coded 3 patients that night, held a woman's hand while we waited for her husband to arrive, changed my gloves 19 times. 12 hours later, I walked through our front door. Derek was sitting at the kitchen table with a manila folder, a legal pad, and a look I'd never seen on his face before, something between fury and math. Derek pushed the folder across the table. 3 credit cards, he said. All in your name, Capital One, Discover, City. I opened the folder. 3 account summaries. My name, my social security number, my parents' home address, the one I'd moved out of 7 years ago. Total outstanding balance, $47,300. I turned the pages slowly. Each statement was a map of someone else's life. A round-trip flight to Tulum, a 5-night stay at a resort in the Maldives, a $1,400 camera lens from B&H Photo, $3,000 at Nordstrom in a single afternoon. Every transaction matched. Tulum. Courtney posted poolside photos in March. The Maldives, her most liked reel ever in November. The camera lens, she'd unboxed it on her story with the caption, investing in my craft. They opened the first one when you were 19, Derek said. He'd already cross-referenced the dates. Same day you signed the paperwork for your nursing school loan. Your dad co-signed that loan. He had every piece of information he needed. I stared at the paper. My father had taken the documents I handed him in trust. My social security card, my proof of enrollment, my signature on a student loan application, and used them to open a credit line in my name. Then he did it again. And again. That's my parents, I said. It came out quiet. Not disbelief, Recognition. The slow, sick click of something finally making sense. Derek's jaw was tight. Wendy, that's a federal crime. I didn't answer. I just kept looking at the numbers. $47,000 of debt I'd never spent a cent of, sitting on my credit like a bruise I couldn't see. My parents hadn't just boycotted my wedding, they'd been borrowing against my future for 10 years. The next evening, Ruth Calloway came to our house. She didn't bring casserole or small talk. She brought her phone and a Ziploc bag with a USB drive inside it, because Ruth Calloway is the kind of woman who backs things up. I saved the recording, she said, settling into the chair at our kitchen table like she'd done this 100 times at the courthouse. The full call, 4 minutes, 37 seconds. She pressed play. My mother's voice filled the kitchen. Warm, concerned, perfectly constructed. The voice she uses at church potlucks and PTA meetings. The voice that makes people lean in and believe her. Wendy has always been difficult. Derek seems like a good man, but I worry he doesn't see it yet. She pushes people away. I just want someone in his life to watch for signs. Signs. Like I was a forecast, something to prepare for and protect against. Ruth stopped the recording. She called me to plant a seed that my future daughter-in-law is unstable. I've sat in courtrooms for 30 years. I know what manipulation sounds like. Derek's hand found mine under the table. Can I have a copy? I said. Ruth slid the USB across the table. Already on it. I didn't cry. I wanted to. Not from sadness, but from the particular kind of exhaustion that comes when someone you love confirms they never loved you the same way back. I had the credit report. I had the recording. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I knew I wasn't throwing them away. You're not difficult, Wendy, Ruth said on her way out, one hand on the doorframe. You're inconvenient to people who need you to be small. I've never forgotten that sentence. I threw myself into the wedding like it was a 12-hour trauma shift. Head down, hands moving, no time for feelings. Derek and I made centerpieces from mason jars and wildflowers from the roadside stand on Route 15. $3 a bunch. We wrapped the jars in twine at the kitchen table every night after my shifts, assembly line style, while a true crime podcast played in the background because neither of us could handle silence. Ruth altered her own wedding dress for me. Ivory lace, tea-length, a little yellowed at the hem. She sat at her sewing machine for 4 evenings straight. When I tried it on and it fit, almost perfectly, just slightly loose at the waist, she pinned it and said, "You'll grow into it. Every good marriage adds a few pounds." Patty called a friend who ran a flower shop 2 towns over. Wholesale rate, half price. We moved the reception from the canceled restaurant to the Calloway family farm, the same pasture where Derek proposed. String lights from the barn supply store, rented tables, a borrowed sound system from Derek's college roommate. The RSVPs came in steady, 200 guests, most from Derek's side, his co-workers, our friends. My side of the aisle, Patty. A handful of nursing school classmates. That was it. My father called one last time, 13 days before the wedding. "Last chance, Wendy. Move the date and we'll forget this happened." "There's nothing to forget, Dad. I'll save you a seat in case you change your mind." He hung up. Patty texted me that night. "Your mom asked me not to come. I told her I'm an adult." I set the phone down, picked up a mason jar, and started wrapping twine. 14 jars to go, 13 days. I could do the math. I kept asking myself, why were my parents willing to miss their own daughter's wedding over a Bali trip? Was it really just about Courtney, or was there something else they were protecting, something that would fall apart if I stopped playing my role? Now I know the answer, but back then, I was still guessing. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace in your family and standing up for what's right? Tell me in the comments. September 14th, 71 degrees. Not a cloud. I woke up at 5:30 because my body doesn't know how to sleep past a shift alarm. The farmhouse was already lit gold. Ruth had been up since 4 arranging chairs on the lawn. I checked my phone. No messages from Harold, none from Diane, nothing from Courtney. Just a text from Patty. On my way, wearing waterproof mascara, no promises. I put on the dress in the upstairs bedroom that used to be Derek's when he was a kid. There were still model airplanes on the shelf. The lace sat cool against my skin. Ruth's stitches held perfect. Patty arrived at 9. She walked in, saw me, and her eyes went red instantly. She pressed both hands over her mouth. "I'm sorry they're not here," she whispered. "Don't be. You're here." She hugged me so tight the lace creaked. At 10 o'clock, the ceremony started. 200 people in white folding chairs on a sloped green pasture, wildflower centerpieces lining the aisle, the Callaway barn behind us like a cathedral with a tin roof. There was no one to walk me down the aisle. No father of the bride, no arm to hold. So I walked alone. I've walked into trauma bays with blood on the floor. I've told families their person didn't make it. I've held my composure through things that would flatten most people. But walking down that aisle by myself, 200 faces turning toward me, knowing my own parents chose a content calendar over this moment, that was the longest 60 feet of my life. Derek stood at the end. His eyes were wet. His hands were steady. I reached him. He took my hand. And I didn't look back. The ceremony was beautiful. I need to say that. Because what came after was loud, and the quiet parts deserve to be remembered too. Derek's best man read a passage. Patty held the rings. The officiant, a retired pastor from Ruth's church, spoke about choosing people who choose you back, and I watched 4 women in the second row reach for tissues at the same time. But I could hear the whispers. During the vows, during the pauses between words, little currents running through the crowd. "Where are her parents?" I heard she kicked them out. That's not what Diane told me. My co-worker Linda, head nurse, 23 years on the floor, afraid of absolutely nothing, leaned in during the ring exchange and squeezed my elbow. "Don't listen. You're radiant." I held it together, through the vows, through the kiss, through the applause. I held it together when Derek said, "I choose you, not because no one else would, because no one else could." I held it together when 200 people stood up and clapped and the sun broke wide open across the pasture like God was showing off. I held it together. The ceremony ended. People hugged us. Someone's kid threw wildflowers that stuck in my hair. Derek's college roommate started the music, a playlist he'd made the night before, half country, half Motown, completely wrong and completely right. We moved to the reception area. Long wood tables under the string lights, catered barbecue from a place in Macon that owed Derek a favor, mason jar centerpieces catching the late afternoon glow. 200 guests, paper napkins, real love. The ceremony was perfect. The reception was where everything changed. I saw the headlights first, a silver Buick rolling slow up the gravel drive. Deliberate. The way you'd pull into a stage entrance if you wanted the audience to notice. My father stepped out in a charcoal vest and pressed slacks. My mother followed in a floral dress and fresh lipstick, camera ready, the way she always is when she knows people are watching. Diane spotted me across the lawn and her face broke into a wide, trembling smile. She walked straight toward me, arms open, voice pitched to Carrie. "Oh, sweetheart, we couldn't miss our baby's big day." She hugged me before I could move. Her perfume hit my nose, the same Estee Lauder she's worn since I was 12, and for one terrible second, my body almost softened into it. Harold shook Derek's hand with both of his. "Welcome to the family, son." Loud, warm, performed for the 8 nearest tables. People clapped. Someone at table 4 said, "See? They came after all." A woman I didn't recognize dabbed her eyes. The prodigal parents, returning just in time. What a beautiful story. I stood frozen. My bouquet hand had gone white knuckle around the stems. I looked at Derek. He met my eyes. His jaw was set, but his gaze was calm. The same look he gets when he's finished a spreadsheet and the numbers finally make sense. He gave me the smallest nod, almost imperceptible, the kind of nod that means, I know, and I'm ready. Because here's the thing my parents didn't account for. They showed up expecting to rewrite the ending. Smiling, hugging, performing. They thought they'd won. They had no idea Derek had brought a projector. The toasts started at golden hour. Derek's best man went first. Funny, short, a story about a fishing trip that got the crowd laughing. Then Ruth said a few words about the kind of woman she'd always hoped her son would find. She looked right at me when she said it, and I almost broke. Then Derek stood up. He'd kept his jacket off all night, sleeves rolled to the elbows. He looked relaxed, but I knew better. I'd seen him prep for bank audits with less tension in his shoulders. He took the microphone from the best man and smiled at the crowd. "I want to thank everyone for being here, especially the people who showed up when it wasn't easy." A murmur. A few people glanced at Harold and Diane, who were seated at a table near the back. Diane with her ankles crossed, Harold with one arm draped over his chair, both of them wearing the satisfied expressions of parents who'd made a grand entrance. "I also want to talk about honesty," Derek said, "because Wendy deserves that." The murmur shifted. Glasses stopped clinking. "Some of you received messages saying Wendy uninvited her parents tonight. That's not what happened." Diane's smile flickered. "Harold and Diane chose to boycott this wedding. Their word was teach her humility. Because Wendy refused to move our date for Courtney's Bali trip." Whispers. Quick ones. The kind that moved through a room like wind through tall grass. Harold pushed his chair back and stood. "That's enough, son." Derek didn't flinch. "I'm not your son, Harold, and I'm not done." 200 people went still. The music had stopped. Even the cicadas seemed to pause. Diane reached for Harold's arm. He shook her off. Derek set his phone on the table next to the Bluetooth speaker. 6 weeks ago, Diane called my mother. She told her that Wendy is emotionally unstable, that she pushes people away, that someone in my family should watch for signs. He looked at Diane. She had gone very still, the way a deer freezes in headlights right before it decides which way to run. "My mother recorded the call." He pressed play. My mother's voice came through the speaker, clear as a church bell and twice as cold. "Wendy has always been difficult. Derek seems like a good man, but I worry he doesn't see it yet. She pushes people away. I just want someone in his life to watch for signs." 200 people heard it. Every word. In my mother's own careful, concerned, rehearsed tone, the one that sounds like love, if you don't know what love actually sounds like. Diane shot to her feet. "That's taken out of context." Ruth Calloway stood up from table 1, 63 years old, steel gray hair pinned back, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She didn't raise her voice. She never has to. "I played the entire recording for my pastor," Ruth said. "He said the same thing I did. It's manipulation." The crowd wasn't whispering anymore. They were silent. The kind of silence that has weight. Patty was crying at her seat, one hand pressed flat against the table, the other covering her mouth. She'd known her sister was cruel. She hadn't known the depth. Harold grabbed Diane's elbow. "We're leaving." Derek held the microphone steady. "You can leave. But there's one more thing your family needs to hear." Harold stopped walking. Derek's college roommate, the one who'd set up the sound system, pulled the white sheet tight between two barn posts. The borrowed projector hummed to life. Numbers filled the screen. 3 credit card accounts. My name at the top of each one. Below it, transaction after transaction, highlighted in yellow. Derek spoke without looking at his notes. He didn't need them. He'd memorized every line. 3 credit cards. Opened in Wendy's name without her knowledge or consent. Total balance, $47,300. Gasps. Real ones, the kind you feel in your ribcage. None of this debt is hers. Every transaction matches Courtney Foster's social media posts. He pointed to the screen. Resort in Tulum, March, business class to the Maldives, November, camera equipment, Nordstrom. All charged to accounts Wendy never opened. Uncle Gene stood up halfway, then sat back down. Aunt Carol put a hand over her mouth. The woman who'd dabbed her eyes when Harold arrived now looked like she'd swallowed something sharp. Harold's voice cut through the silence. "That's family business." Derek turned to face him directly. "It's federal fraud." Diane was crying now, not the delicate, sympathetic kind she'd used on the phone with Ruth. This was different, mascara-streaked, involuntary. Harold grabbed Diane's arm and pulled her toward the gravel drive. The aunt who'd texted me, "Shame on you," Carol, stood up and followed them, but not to comfort. "Harold," she said, "is this true?" He didn't answer. He didn't look back. The Buick doors slammed, the engine turned, gravel popped under the tires as they pulled away. I stood next to Derek, my hand on his arm, and said the only thing that mattered. I didn't plan this, but I'm done being the version of me that makes their lies easier to believe. We danced after they left. Derek took my hand, and we danced on the grass in borrowed string lights, while 200 people who now knew the truth clapped and cheered, and someone turned the Motown back on. I'm not a good dancer, neither is Derek. We swayed and stepped on each other's feet and laughed, and for 5 minutes the night belonged to us the way it was supposed to from the beginning. The next morning it was Monday, and Monday meant paperwork. I filed an identity theft report with the FTC. Derek drove me to the county sheriff's office, where I filed a second report, local jurisdiction, paper trail, case number. A deputy with kind eyes and a notepad took my statement for 40 minutes. I called all 3 credit card companies, froze the accounts, initiated formal disputes. Derek walked me through each one. He does this for clients at the bank, untangling credit messes, verifying signatures. This time the client was his wife. Every card had been opened when I was under 21. None carried my signature. I changed my social security suffix, closed every account that still listed my parents' address, set up fraud alerts with all 3 bureaus. I did not call Harold. I did not text Diane. I did not explain, justify, or apologize. I didn't file the report to punish them, I told Derek that night. We were on the porch, drinking sweet tea, cicadas screaming in the dark. I filed it because $47,000 of debt wasn't mine. He nodded. And because if I didn't, they'd do it again. Maybe not to me. Maybe to Courtney's kids someday. He reached over and took my hand. We sat there until the tea was warm and the stars were out. Silence never felt so clean. Courtney called from Bali 3 days later. I was folding laundry. Her name flashed on the screen and I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the part of me that still remembered braiding her hair when she was 6. The Discover card got declined at the hotel, she said. Her voice was thin. No ring-light confidence, just panic. What did you do? I froze my accounts. My name, my credit, my decision. You're ruining everything. I have a brand deal. The resort is part of the content package. I need that card for 3 more days. Fund it yourself. You're 25. Silence. Then a sound I hadn't heard from Courtney in years. A real sob. Not the kind she performs for stories. She hung up. I set the phone on the dresser and went back to folding towels. Over the next week, the fallout hit Courtney's feed like weather. The luxury Bali content just stopped. No more infinity pool shots. No more rooftop cocktails at sunset. She posted a photo from a budget hostel with the caption, "Keeping it real," and her followers noticed. Comments started blooming under her posts. Didn't your sister just get married? Heard your parents weren't there? T? Why did you skip your own sister's wedding for a vacation? Girl, the math isn't mathing. Courtney didn't respond to any of them. She privated her account for 2 days, then came back with a generic boundaries post that everyone saw right through. I watched from a distance. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt the way you feel when you watch a building you used to live in get condemned. Relief and grief, tangled up so tight you can't separate them. Diane called twice. I sent both to voicemail. The family rearranged itself in the weeks that followed. Slowly. The way tectonic plates shift, invisible at first, then suddenly everything's in a different place. Uncle Gene called me on a Wednesday evening. Gene is Harold's older brother. 64, retired electrician, never missed a foster family reunion in his life. He'd been one of the first to text me. Your parents gave you everything. I owe you an apology, he said. No preamble, no small talk. I believed your dad. I shouldn't have. Thank you, Uncle Gene. He's my brother, and I love him, but what I saw on that screen, I can't unsee it. Aunt Carol, the one who texted shame on you, mailed me a card. Inside, a handwritten note and $200 cash for your new start. I'm sorry I didn't ask your side first. The family group chat reorganized. Gene removed Harold and Diane himself. 30 people watched it happen in real time. His message was short. Until you explain the credit cards, I don't think you should be here. No one objected. At church on Sunday, Ruth told me the pastor's sermon had been about honesty within families. She said Harold and Diane were not in attendance. They hadn't been for 3 weeks running. In a small town in Georgia, 3 missed Sundays is a statement. People notice. People talk. The Fosters, who had built their reputation on being pillars, on Diane's deviled eggs at every potluck and Harold's handshake at every fundraiser, were suddenly absent. And in a place where absence speaks louder than words, the silence around them grew thick. I didn't orchestrate any of it. The truth did the work. I just stopped covering for them. The brand deal collapsed on day 11. Courtney's Bali sponsor, a wellness supplement company, pulled the $30,000 contract after their PR team found the comment section. Someone had screenshot the projector image from the wedding. A guest had posted a shaky phone video on their private Facebook. Small towns are leaky that way. And it had made its way into a Reddit thread about family drama. 40,000 followers unfollowed Courtney in 2 weeks. Her engagement rate cratered. The algorithm, which had once handed her reach like candy, now buried her posts beneath cooking tutorials and cat videos. She flew home from Bali early, economy seat, middle row. I know because Patty saw the flight itinerary. Courtney texted Diane begging for a pickup at Hartsfield. Back home, reality set in. Every credit card Courtney had been using, for flights, hotels, content equipment, the daily seamless order that fueled her lifestyle, was in my name. All frozen, all disputed. She had no personal savings, no backup card. Her checking account held $1,100. I didn't celebrate. There's no satisfaction in watching your little sister Google how to open a bank account at 25. That's not a win. That's the receipt for a decade of someone else's parenting failure. Harold and Diane couldn't help her either. Without the cards in my name, their cash flow tightened overnight. The new roof Courtney had supposedly funded? Never happened. The money had gone to Courtney's expenses, funneled through accounts bearing my name, laundered through the fiction that it was family money being shared. The math was simple once you stripped the performance away. My parents had been running their younger daughter's lifestyle on their older daughter's credit, and now the credit was gone. Courtney called one more time, a Thursday, late, almost 11 p.m. Her voice was different, stripped down, no affect, no performance, no strategy, just tired. I knew about the cards, she said. I sat on the edge of the bed. Derek was already asleep. I didn't wake him. Not all of them, she continued. But the first one, the capital one. I was there when Dad opened it. I was 15. He said it was for emergencies. I asked whose name it was in, and he said yours, and I asked why, and he said, because Wendy doesn't need the credit right now. I thought that was normal. It wasn't normal, Courtney. I know that now. We sat in the silence for a long time. Not the hostile kind. The kind that happens when two people are standing in the same wreckage and neither knows where to step. I'm not calling to ask you to drop the report, she said. I know you won't. I'm calling because... I don't know. Because you're my sister and I used your name to pay for a life I didn't earn, and I don't know how to sit with that. I closed my eyes. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said. Maybe someday, but not today. I get it. She hung up. No drama, no tears, just a click and then nothing. I sat on that bed for a long time after, and then I cried. Not for the money, not for the wedding drama or the group chat or the credit report on the projector screen. I cried because I lost my sister a long time ago, maybe before she was even old enough to know she was being used. And this phone call was the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. Loss doesn't always arrive all at once. Sometimes it shows up dressed like a family. I keep wondering, if Courtney had told me the truth sooner, would things be different? Or did my parents build a system where both of us were trapped, just in different cages? Courtney got the golden one, I got the invisible one, but we were both locked in. What do you think? Does Courtney deserve a second chance? Or does knowing at 15 and staying silent for 10 years make her just as responsible? Tell me in the comments. 3 months after the wedding, a letter arrived. Handwritten. My father's blocky print on the envelope. No return address, but I'd know that handwriting from across a parking lot. It's the same hand that labeled every shelf in his hardware store. Wendy, you're still our daughter. This has gone far enough. 11 words. No mention of the credit cards, no acknowledgement, no apology, just a command dressed up as affection. Diane texted a week later, "Can we have Christmas together? For family?" The same phrasing she'd used in the group chat, the same packaging. Wrap the request in family and hope no one notices it's actually an instruction. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Derek had spread the credit report, the same one where Ruth had played the recording, and I wrote back, one letter, on paper, because some things should be permanent. Dear Mom and Dad, I will always be your daughter. But I will not be in a relationship where my name is used without my permission. My reputation is damaged behind my back, and my boundaries are treated as disobedience. When you're ready to acknowledge what happened, not explain it, not justify it, acknowledge it. I'll be here. Wendy. I sealed it, stamped it, drove to the post office myself. No response came. Not that week. Not that month. I won't pretend that didn't hurt. It did. Every holiday that passed without a call landed like a small stone in a jar I keep somewhere behind my ribs. But the jar doesn't overflow anymore, because I stopped adding my own stones to it. The guilt, the self-doubt, the voice that used to whisper, maybe you should have just moved the date. I don't need an apology to move on, but I need honesty to stay. 6 months after the wedding, we closed on a house. Small, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, a front porch with a railing that needs paint. It sits on a half-acre lot at the edge of town where the streetlights end and the fireflies begin. My credit report came back clean. Every fraudulent account disputed, investigated, and removed. Derek walked me through the final letter from Equifax like it was a diploma, which, in a way, it was. Proof that my name belongs to me again. Ruth brought a rose bush the day we moved in. Pink climbers. She planted it by the front steps and said, "Every house needs something alive that comes back every year." Patty comes for dinner every Sunday now. She brings cornbread, Diane's recipe, which she learned first and makes better. We sit at our second-hand table, the 4 of us, me, Derek, Ruth, Patty, and we talk about everything and nothing, and nobody performs, and nobody keeps score. I still work nights. I still wear scrubs that smell like hand sanitizer in other people's emergencies. I chose this job because I wanted to help people on their worst days. Turns out, I needed to learn how to show up for myself on mine. I didn't get the family I was born into. I got the family I built. And every single person at that Sunday table chose to be there. The hardest boundary I ever set was a 6-word sentence. "I'm not moving the date, Dad." And it changed everything. If you're waiting for permission to protect yourself, from anyone, including the people who raised you, consider this your sign. You don't owe anyone your peace, not even family. Especially not family who borrows against your future and calls it love. That's my story. I know it's heavy, and I know some of you are sitting with your own version of it right now. A parent who controls, a sibling who takes, a family that asks you to shrink so someone else can shine. If this video made you feel seen, or angry, or a little lighter, that's exactly why I shared it. Hit subscribe if you want more stories like this, and check the description below. There's another story about a woman whose family tried to sell her house while she was deployed overseas. It's unbelievable. Thank you for staying until the end. I'll see you in the next one.